Hi everyone, welcome to Vamp's webinar. If you're in Sydney like me, I hope you're keeping safe and dry. It's a very wet day out there. But we're back with the second in our webinar series, COVID-19 Perspectives. I'm Lauren, Vamp's Head of Content, and each Thursday I'm joined by two guests and we have a chat about their experience of working through lockdown. Last week we talked about social media marketing, and this week we're talking about influencers. So we're joined by digital content creator Cheryl Law, who works within Vamp's influencer community and has collaborated with brands like Westfield and Sheridan. And we're also joined by Alice Dirks, who is one of Vamp's project leads. She ensures that campaigns between brands and influencers run smoothly and hit all of their objectives. Hi both, welcome.
Hello. Hello.
So just a reminder to everyone watching, if you have any questions at all for me or the ladies, just pop them in the Q&A box below and we'll try and get to those at the end. I have a quick question for everyone else as well. I would love to know, I'm just going to pop a poll on the screen there. Are you an influencer, are you a marketer, or are you neither? I'd just like to know who's watching. Be interesting to know. Okay, while we have those that poll taking place, I'm going to ask you guys some quick questions about working from home, because of course this is a different situation for all of us at the moment, and I got some great tips last week from Gemma and Caitlin, so I'm hoping for the same again this week. So Cheryl, what would you say is the best thing for you and the worst thing about working from home?
Well, hi everyone. Thanks for having me, Lauren. So there are so many good things, but that have come out of this situation, and obviously it's a challenging time for everyone, but I think a lot of us can agree that not having to commute is a big one. So having a lot of time back in our days. I know for me personally, I live out in Bayside, so it takes me about an hour at least to get anywhere, and I used to be out a lot, so I used to go to events, and obviously I have a full-time job as well, so I do design and creative work for a large organization, and so I was traveling and I was driving every day. Having this reprieve just means that I'm thinking about my time so much differently. I get to use mornings and days so well now. In the past, when we hit this time of year, so the ending of daylight savings, it meant that I would always think about how am I going to shoot my content, because by the time it hits 4:30, you've got such a change of light. And now I get to just make the most of being at home all day. So that's one thing. But I also checked my calendar today and I realized that this is the end of almost 8 weeks of being at home. So 2 months of not having my normal routine of going to work and seeing people in an office, or going to an event most evenings and going to the gym even. And so, yeah, there's a huge effect of that. And I honestly wonder what our social lives will be like after this. But I have found that the Instagram community of direct messages and getting responses to my stories has been something that has really encouraged me and really kept that conversation going. So whatever I'm doing every day, I still feel like I'm having that interaction with people. It just comes by the form of messages.
Definitely. It's a hard time to be an extrovert, isn't it? I think you're right. It's like it's going to be a very big adjustment. It's going to be like being released back into the wild, I think, after the end of all of this. Alice, how about you? Have you been sort of leaning on Instagram as well? And what has been the one Instagram account that's been helping you through the isolation period?
Well, hi everyone. Yeah, I've really been loving the Daily Oz. They've been keeping me up to date with the news each day. They do some really great stories. So you get the news, but in just bite-sized chunks. So it makes it really manageable. And they also end each little segment that they do with a good news story as well. So I love seeing the sort of positivity and the great initiatives that are coming out around the world during this time.
I love that. Yeah, that sounds a little bit like a podcast that I'm loving at the moment called I think it's called the Daily Squiz or something like that, but it's a very quick news cycle, a bit of lightness in there, and then you can get on with your day, which I like. Yeah. Cheryl, how about productivity hacks? Have you got one that you can share with us?
Oh, that is just such a tricky one, right? Because now that we're at home, everything's at the door. Do we keep our normal schedule and for me, I found that my schedule has changed completely. I am such a night owl, so I find that come the afternoon, that's when I'm starting to come alive. And like I said, then the light changes and then you start going, oh, actually I can wind down. So I think that it's about having a bit of a flexible mindset, because if you think that you're going to achieve the same thing every day at home in an environment where you're limited by perhaps what, again, if you're creating content, what your house looks like, what kind of light you get, I just don't want everyone to have that pressure. Well, I've certainly gone through this where you feel like, this was my plan for the day. And if you have a day like yesterday, where in Melbourne, it was freezing, it was raining nonstop all day, it was so grey and cold. I had like my slippers on and my robe on all day, and it just changed my general outlook. So I think that if we can be a little bit more responsive to what's actually, our environment, but also our mood, then we get to be a lot more productive. Because when I have a day like today, I'm feeling really fresh, and a big part of that is being able to interact and chat with you too. Then suddenly you find that it comes a lot more easier, I should say, and you have a lot more fun doing it as well. So the productivity is a result of a passion, and that's always been me. If I don't want to do something, I'm a procrastinator. But then at the same time, your flip side, when you are productive, you are productive. So just play to your strengths and minimize the impacts of your weaknesses. That's one quote that I've always read and lived by.
That's great advice. That is really good advice. And I think, like you say, at the moment, it's not business as usual. You've got to be kind to yourself. It's not, not every day is going to look the same. And I think you definitely sent us your Melbourne weather today, because that's how
oh, we got some sunshine. I don't know where it came from, but I'm so glad.
We swapped over.
It does help, doesn't it? Okay, well, let's get down to business. Let's talk about influencer marketing. We'll start with you, Alice, with your insight. So when we get a client brief, those go out to influencers on the app they have on their phones, and they get to choose whether they opt in or not. How have you found those opt-in rates to be through this time of lockdown? Has there been any change?
Yeah, well, I think we've been really, really lucky at Vamp, because we've continued to see some really strong opt-in rates on our campaigns over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And so for many of our influencers, their Instagram collaborations are their side hustle, which supports their main career, like Cheryl mentioned. So keeping up the creative work is really important during the unstable times we've all found ourselves in. Along with that, some of our influencers, they do own small businesses, and unfortunately, they've actually been affected by the lockdown from that side. So their Instagram work again has taken on a new importance for them. So we're really happy to bring opportunities to them so that we can all work through this together. We did do a poll recently as well with our influencers on the effects of the crisis, and 75% of our creators had lost earnings due to the crisis. So it shows how widespread it has been. There's been so many events, even in the long term, being cancelled, and that can affect both their Instagram work and other collaborations that they have outside of that. So we really want to be there to support them where we can. So it's great that we're still, putting out briefs, and the community's so receptive to them. Away from the sort of economic importance of the briefs, I think, Cheryl's touched on it a bit as well. Our creators, they love being able to turn their attention to that creative side and explore new ways of creating content, which has been really helpful, in them dealing with everything that's going on in the world, personally, and, for their mental health, because I know a lot of us have found that it is tricky not interacting with people daily, not having that social element. And yeah, with the events being cancelled as well, not having that to play with as well. We also had in the survey asked our influencers, have you applied for more work than usual? And over half said that they had. And there's been an increasing engagement too, which has been really positive, showing that the value of the collaborations that we are putting out, they haven't been diminished because of the virus as well. So not only is there more work that our influencers are opting into, they're getting a great response as well, which I think lends itself to them actually opting in for more collaborations. And, Cheryl's touched on as well, that great response that you do get, feeling part of a community and getting that instant feedback on stories as well. It just, makes it all seem worth it and takes our minds off, what's actually going on outside of our walls.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, much more rewarding then in that case. It's different from there for where they're creating their content. Obviously, they're a lot more limited now. They're still having to stay at home. How have you found, has it really been testing their creativity?
Yeah, definitely. Not being able to, go outside as much, seek out those shoot locations and do events, it has been tricky, but our influencers have really stepped up to the plate and we've seen some amazing content being created. I think it lends itself to, that passion element and, this being able to create that content for brands, it creates a sense of normality for them, for the situation they're in. So taking the brief and seeing what we can do with the situation that, we're all in. We've got some great home studios that I've seen from our influencers and ways with playing with in creative ways, in limited conditions, but still being able to, produce that really high quality content that brands want. On our current Huawei campaign, which we're running, we've seen some amazing creativity and some great perspectives of landscapes out of windows, out of doors, playing with perspective in the home as well. So yeah, there's been so many positives to the situation, and we just love supporting the creators where we can to develop that creativity.
Amazing, that's great. Okay, well, Cheryl, how would you say, so we've heard kind of what Alice sort of thinks as an overview, but kind of going really from your insight, how has it affected your workload?
Well, that's actually what sort of triggered this conversation between ourselves, I believe. One of the things that I've really noticed and appreciated about Vamp is during this period, especially, I feel like the volume and quality of the campaigns that are on the app have really stayed par for the course, or if not better. I think a lot of creators would agree with me that whilst there has been a lot of effect to the Instagram community and this industry, especially by means of events, obviously we can't actually be in person, a lot of budget is either stalled, but also, businesses have to be conscious about their longevity. So the fact that Vamp now has so many amazing briefs out there and continues to, in a time when everything else is so uncertain, that wasn't something that I think anyone would have predicted. I mean, we all would hope for it, but the fact that I personally have been able to do quite a few different campaigns for brands like Westfield who are adapting really quickly and trying to pivot to different ways of servicing the community through, for instance, a click and collect service. That's something, that I'm really encouraged to see as well. So I'm always just telling and trying to pay forward that gratitude to brands and just letting them know that I really appreciate that investment. And I hope that continues because it is such a special community.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Westfield there, and that you mentioned you do have some sort of brand collaborations happening at the moment. How are you having to adapt what you would normally do? Like, is there anything that you've had to stop doing, and is there any sort of content types that you've started doing because of lockdown?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of you, if you've seen any of my photos, I used to go out a lot. So a lot of mine were venue based, whether, that was at a cafe or an event. So a lot of that has stopped in just like that. And for me, one thing that I picked up is trying to find a space that I felt inspired by to take content, but also, for me, natural light is a huge one. So I got fed up one day, took a big white sheet, went into my backyard. I have a huge patch of lawn and a lovely garden wall, luckily, and just set it up there, took out my picnic basket and started playing around with the shots there, and I ended up loving it. And the best thing is, and like I said, it's a lot of it is attached to that passion and that love that you have for it. If I love a photo, it will actually genuinely translate into someone else loving a photo as well, and I see that as well with the stats and the engagement. So that was a nice surprise for me, actually. Something out of necessity turned into just a whole new style for my feed that's taken over for the last 2 months.
And that's going to be it now, just in the backyard. That's the style.
A new hashtag, in the backyard.
And that's so cool as well, because if that's something you might not have experimented with otherwise, and that's something that's done really well for you, that's brilliant. You mentioned there sort of that if you love what you're doing and it kind of shines through and you get that back in engagement, what have you noticed with your engagement levels over the past few weeks?
Well, I mentioned to you earlier about Instagram direct messages, and how happy is everyone that we can respond on Instagram desktop now. So that has been a huge one. I find that that community and that instant response, right? Last night I posted up a pasta bake that I made, right? Because it was a cold night and I really just wanted something comforting. And next minute after dinner, I was literally having a chat about my dinner to a whole bunch of different people, friends that are here, but people that, you know, I wouldn't normally necessarily talk to, maybe unless it was at an event. So it gets the conversation started. And that's what I love about it, because in this time, without this community of messages and watching other people's days and being able to respond in kind, I wouldn't have that same level of, you know, productivity, but also motivation. And like I said, so it's fulfilling a social aspect, but also it is helping because overall, I think we see that engagement via comments, messages, likes is really going through the roof, because for the first time, it's our only social channel. So we're lucky to have it. And I said, you know, so long as this pandemic doesn't take away internet, I think we'll be okay to do our part by staying at home.
I think that's the thing as well. If you're also spending more time sort of engaging back with your community and stuff, you're going to be building that stronger relationship just because you've got the time to be replying, whether it's messages about your dinner or whatever. I thought it was really interesting as well. We were chatting the other day what you said about the shared experience of particularly in Australia, of the bushfires and then now going into lockdown. How have you found that's impacted your engagement?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I guess I call it a normalization, right? Doesn't it feel like we're on this journey together? And when you have everyone talking about the same thing, so bushfires was a big one. And then now, obviously, staying at home and everyone encouraging each other to do that, I guess it just creates a much more, yeah, like I said, a normal attitude and atmosphere, which means that we all feel that same level of this is acceptable. I'm not actually, you know, not to say doing the wrong thing, but it just creates this, you know, community spirit. And for me, for my Instagram, you know, I think this is going to be the theme. We will always remember working from home, and rather all the things that came out of that: work from home lifestyle, work from home outfits, work from home, you know, that culture and all the content that's coming out of it. Some really great like selfie content. Suddenly that's become a really big one. You expect to see that on your feed, right? And you expect to see really high quality mirror selfies, and you go, oh wow, they make it look so simple. But that's also, you know, that whole leveling up of an industry, or content type that never was before. And similarly, you know, I see it in everyday in stories. Like that's just become such a big thing. Like sometimes I spend that long on my stories that I feel like I get through my whole list of bubbles across the top of Instagram. So it's a unique time. Yeah.
Yeah. You're never alone, are you? There's always more stories to watch, I think. And I was laughing then because I think there really is these like micro trends that have come out of lockdown, and I definitely think, yeah, the selfies and the mirror selfies is one of them. And if you ever think it looks easy to do and you try one yourself, you realise it's not.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
It's a lot harder than it looks. So when I did the poll earlier, it actually looked we almost had an even split of marketers and creators watching us, which is great. So I thought we could maybe just end the conversation with some advice for both. So Alice, what would you say? What is your top advice for marketers working with influencers at the moment?
Yeah, well, definitely my advice would be to keep engaging creators, and keeping the brief requirements open will really allow the space to show that creative flair that they have, given, you know, the situations that we found ourselves in. But I do think, you know, there's some really, really high quality content that can still be produced. So definitely, and it's a great time as well to test and learn and try different content types as well, and see what that response is from our influencers as well. And that all lends itself to that increased engagement that we're seeing. So it can pay off not just now for the short term, but also in the long term as well.
Yeah, amazing. There's just, you know, we're spending so much time on social media. So if you were ever thinking of experimenting with IGTV or anything like that. It does seem like the time, doesn't it? How about you, Cheryl? What would be your advice for other content creators out there at the moment?
Well, just like I've experienced, I think that experimenting and being flexible has such a high reward rate. You know, you might find something that you never knew that you loved. Maybe it's a new style of shooting, or maybe, like I said, it's just a new backdrop, something to inspire you. And that's what we need these days, just a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of magic in every day to say, there is actually something that I can do. This isn't my normal. And that can throw people, just not having that same, I guess, comfort zone, but to be able to expand on that and adapt. And I think, just like you said, Alice, brands and, you know, marketers are so open to the changing and adapting ways that bloggers are constantly evolving marketing. They're evolving social media, and without challenges like this, our industry might not actually grow as fast as it is. And so we're all probably better off for it, even though it is, like I said, a challenge in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because there's definitely a common thread through that in terms of for both marketers and digital content creators, and that's to keep connecting with your audiences, experiment with different content types and see what works, and to test and learn and go from there. So, well, that has absolutely flown. We've gone over our 15 minutes, but it was so good to talk to you both and have those insights. Thanks so much both for joining me. If that sparks any questions about influencer marketing, please do get in touch with us at Vamp. But apart from that, thank you so much for joining us. I hope it's been helpful, and I'll be back next Thursday and we'll be talking all things people and culture then. So thanks a lot. See you then.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye.
Bye.